This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.
That's number one. You kind of reset your
painful, tender to the touch. May also
same shoulder length, and the other.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Real Health Podcast with Brandy and Amir. I'm Dr. Amir Rashidian, a chiropractor, and Brandy actually is not here today. We have the great and incredible rising star, Dr. Cole Talton, with us today. And it's interesting because we had a guest scheduled for today.
we did.
Who apparently is under the weather, so we wish her well. And we'll try to get her back sometime soon. She's a life coach, is that right?
Yes, health and wellness.
Health and wellness coach. So anyways, but we have plenty of material, and there's news and articles we can be talking about. So just to get you up to speed in case this is the first time you're watching, Real Health Podcast is brought to you by the Frederick Podcast Network. Can be found on listenfrederick.com. And our purpose is to take all the latest information in the mainstream media, news, research, findings on drugs, surgery, and illnesses. We bring it to you and give you our wellness perspective from a non-drug, non-surgical point of view. And our focus and purpose is to help you feel better, get stronger, live longer, and feel younger. Having said that, we have some good articles here. This is it's a little sad when you look at the title of it, but I think it's going to have a happy ending. I'm a fan of this gentleman. I don't know how much you know him, but the title article says, Billy Joel announces brain disorder and cancels all concerts. So are you familiar with Billy Joel?
I am. So my dad was a big classic, I guess now it's not classic, but classic rock / pop. So
There you go.
grew up in the 70s and 80s. So
Okay.
definitely very familiar.
Very cool. I mean, I would think most people have heard Piano Man, one of the best songs of all time. Brandy and I actually went to a concert
That's very cool.
at Madison Square Garden.
Nice.
I forget when it was, 5 or 6 years ago. Might have been longer. Time flies by.
Oh, yeah.
But he did a great job, and apparently he's
He's
in his-
76, so
Yes.
he would have been 71.
That's right. Still pretty amazing. He had a lot of energy. Good performer. So the article says Joel said he had normal pressure hydrocephalus, which has led to problems with hearing, vision, and balance. So this is interesting because hydrocephalus refers to fluid around the brain.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of normal pressure hydrocephalus. Usually it's increased pressure hydrocephalus, which causes a lot of these problems. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
this is a bit baffling to me. Normally when people have hydrocephalus, they do a small craniotomy where they put a little hole there. They put a little device that pumps the fluid out. They put a shunt with a line that goes into the neck and dumps it into the it's called the thoracic duct. Is that where it empties out into? So because they're either producing too much cerebrospinal fluid, which is building up pressure in the brain, or it's not draining properly, so they had to create an outside drain for it. Everything this article said sounds like the same thing, but I just don't understand the normal pressure. Usually they'll do an MRI of the brain, and if it look on the MRI, the fluid, because there's fluid around the brain, cushioning the brain, if the fluid looks thicker and the brain looks like it's being squeezed, you get diagnosed with hydrocephalus. If the pressure is normal, I just don't understand what they would see. Do you have any ideas what that means?
No, I don't. I think the interesting part about this, it'd be interesting to know if he was born with hydrocephalus, because it's a lot more common as an infant to be born with hydrocephalus. And so
Right.
maybe he recovered and now it's coming back, so to speak, in his 70s. So
That's interesting. It says Billy is undergoing specific physical therapy and has been advised to refrain from performing during this recovery period. So, and that's another part, is I've never seen physical therapy being prescribed for hydrocephalus.
And yeah, that's interesting. So I'm thinking it's probably something similar to like SOT, where they're doing like a sacral occipital technique.
Okay.
And maybe trying to help pump that cerebral spinal fluid.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Because did you know every time you breathe, your tailbone moves forward and back? Which it's not the true tailbone, because that's the coccyx. We were talking about the sacrum, which is the triangular bone above the coccyx. A lot of people refer to that as also the tailbone, but that pumps back and forth, and it causes that cerebrospinal fluid to circulate. Also, a lot of people believe that the cranial bones actually pump cerebrospinal fluid as well. So that's why craniosacral technique is such a valid technique. So normal pressure hydrocephalus, or NPH, is a rare condition that occurs when excess cerebrospinal fluid builds up in the brain, causing symptoms that include trouble walking and controlling one's bladder. It can also lead to cognitive impairment, including memory problems. If the disease is diagnosed early enough, it can be treated successfully through surgery that creates a path for the fluid to flow out of the brain, alleviating symptoms. But in later stages, some of its effects can become irreversible. In his statement, Joel, 76, added, "I'm sincerely sorry to disappoint our audience and thank you for your understanding." And Billy Joel, certainly an accomplished musician, 43 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart. It's pretty incredible. I mean, you're amazing if you have one or two.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's tough. So I apologize because I still don't understand what normal pressure hydrocephalus is. They just said he needs surgery, but they also said he's getting physical therapy, not surgery. So it's a mystery. Maybe they just don't want to reveal too much about his privacy, but normal pressure hydrocephalus is probably underdiagnosed because its symptoms can be dismissed as normal effects of aging. So people are urged not to make the assumption and not to make that assumption, and to see a doctor if they experience gait, bladder, and cognitive problems. I can't see someone having all of a sudden balance issues and losing their bladder, not wanting to go see a doctor. But I guess there are people like that. So we are going to wish Billy Joel a fast and complete recovery.
Yes. I'd love to see what his neck looks like in a lateral view to see if he has any kind of abnormalities with his curvature there. And because a lot of what we're educated on is how the curve in your neck, whether you have a hyperkyphosis or lordosis, can impact that cerebral spinal fluid. So
100%. It also decreases blood flow to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the whole the ventricular system of drainage in the brain, that was a difficult part of neuroanatomy for me when we were in school back in the day. So we'll leave that to the neurosurgeons. And but absolutely, your spine affects your brain affects your spine. You cannot have head trauma without affecting your neck. And a lot of times, it's amazing. Some of these things really start with head trauma. There's head trauma. They recover from it. Everything's fine. But then 20, 30 years later, they find out they have something like a neurodegenerative disorder. So speaking of brains, I wanted to bring this one up because it talks about the brain as well. And the title, this is New York Times. It says, "Our bigger brains came with a downside. Faster aging. A study comparing chimpanzee and human brains suggests that the regions that grew the most during human evolution are the most susceptible to aging." So first red flag I see in this title is when he talks about evolution. I know there's definitely two schools of thought, and some people believe the Earth is billions of years old, 20 or 40 billion years, and over the past 8 billion years, and life has been evolving, and we all started from this soup.
Basically.
Right? That's a dirt soup that somehow became life, and so and then it led to single cell organisms. So all of our grandparents and ancestors are
soup.
Yes, and then but there's really no evidence of that whatsoever. It's hearsay. I know there's species that are similar in features and genetics and. But for me to go, okay, so we evolved from monkeys, but why are they stronger, faster, more agile, more capable than us? Didn't evolution talk about survival of the fittest? So who do you think's more susceptible to predators? Someone who stands up and says, "Hey, here I am," or someone who's on all fours and can run really fast and climb trees and hang by their tail?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think you put a human in a cage with a big gorilla, it's not going to go too well for the human, no matter what case it is. So
I don't know if we're exactly fitter, but I'm going to play along because the entire article talked about evolution. It says the human brain enables us to use language, make plans for the future, coordinate with one another, and at a scale never seen before in the history of life. Now, their history of life goes back billions. My history of life goes back 6,000 years. Listen, if you've been to the Creation Museum or you've been to Noah's Ark in Kentucky, have you ever been there?
Uh-uh.
It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of evidence you'll see where they show different layers. What are they called? Earth's layers.
Layers would be a good term.
Yeah, and they carbon date them and so on. They talk about how Earth can't really possibly be that old. And then there's the whole Big Bang theory, where it says the whole universe started as a dot, and it started to spin, and then things spun out of it. So it in theory, cool. Like there was a bang and everything started to spin and came out. But why is it then some planets spin this way and some planets spin the other way? Some of them have moons that go this way and some of them have moons that go the other way. Well, if we all spun from the same thing, they should all be spinning in the same direction. I don't know. That's just one argument. We don't know.
Well, I'd like to know who put that dot there, too. If we all came from this dot, who put the dot there, you know?
Exactly. Because, that's a lot of times the argument is, well, then who created God? Okay, well, who created your dot?
Yeah, well, there you go.
We don't know. We don't know. There's certain things we'll never know. Maybe we'll find out after death. But so it says, our brains came with a downside, according to a study published on Wednesday. The regions that expanded the most in human evolution became exquisitely vulnerable to the ravages of old age. The 86 billion neurons in the human brain cluster into hundreds of distinct regions. For centuries, researchers could recognize a few regions, like the brainstem, by hallmarks such as the clustering of neurons. But these big regions turned out to be divided into smaller ones, many of which were revealed only with the help of powerful scanners. The human brain is 3 times as large as that of chimpanzees. Now, earlier they said we're not directly from chimpanzees, but humans and chimpanzees came from the same thing. Believe what you want. I'm not. I can't prove creation, so I can't prove evolution. So I think I ultimately. But every belief is a choice. Would you agree?
I would agree, absolutely. And I think if you could prove evolution or prove creation, we might not be sitting in this room right now. So
no, we'd be somewhere else.
Yeah, we would be somewhere else.
Dr. Vickery and his colleagues developed a computer program to analyze brain scans from 189 chimpanzees and 480 humans. Their program mapped each brain by recognizing clusters of neurons that formed distinct regions. Both species had 17 brain regions. They found a number of regions that were roughly the same size in both species, but a few areas were much larger in people. One of them was the orbitofrontal cortex, a region that sits directly behind the eyes and is essential for decision making. So we're assuming that humans had smaller brains before.
I'm kind of struggling to see what they're getting at with the size of the brain, because they talk about birds and ravens, which are extremely intelligent, with a brain not even a tenth of the size of our own.
That's right.
So kind of, I'm sure we'll get to it about that connection.
And some birds live to be 100 years, don't they?
Birds can live quite a long time. So I believe the species that has the longest length of life is the Greenland shark, which can live to several hundreds of years old.
Wow. Well, I was reading a book that talked about how certain species cannot die of old age. And it was the Galapagos tortoise, I believe the shark you're talking about, and I forget what the third one was, but the fourth one they said was humans. That technically there's nothing that says humans should die of old age. But
The only thing I can think of that I've been educated on would be oxygen and the free radicals that we absorb into our body and
Right.
whether or not those play a part in aging us. And so we obviously need oxygen. So it would come down to, do we have to wear something that can filter out those free radicals to stop us from aging? So how much technology would be involved to keep us from aging would be my question.
Yeah, good point. There was the serum thiol study. Are you familiar with the serum thiol study? That so it called it kind of a landmark study, and a few other experts reported on it. But what they were saying was serum thiol. Thiol is a substance in the blood that helps to repair DNA from oxidative damage. So it promotes aging, healthy aging, and reduces chances of cancer. Well, people who are chronically ill or have chronic pain had the lowest levels of serum thiol. Healthy people had double the amount, and people under long-term chiropractic care had twice the serum thiol levels of healthy people.
Wow.
It was the highest levels.
That's pretty
And
amazing.
long-term chiropractic care was, I believe, was defined as longer than 6 months of chiropractic care. Because the study also showed, which they didn't talk about, initially when you start chiropractic, your serum thiol dips a little bit. And then it goes up, and then it goes up double what it was originally and stays there. So there's another promotion for chiropractic, along with the curvature of the neck and so on. Neuroscientists have long known that by the time people reach their 30s, their neurons start losing some of their connecting branches. You know, and I also read that I saw in this article that teenagers start to lose brain cells.
I think I know a couple teenagers that probably don't have all their brain cells. So.
And that's why they act so weird.
I think so,
because they so the brain gets really, really, really big over your infant, childhood, adolescence, and then in teenage years it starts to become more efficient. So and a young teenager's brain, 13, 14, 15 years, when they have a thought, it goes from here to there to there to there to there, and finally it goes to the body part that it needs to go, that input, that signal. And once they're adults, it just goes from there directly there, so it becomes more efficient. So it sloughs off a lot of those neurons, and it actually shrinks a little bit, but in that process it becomes more efficient and more effective. So you ever wonder why your teenagers act weird? It's because their brains are too big. It's actually shrinking.
And I think going back to what you said about brain trauma, I think that plays a big significant part.
100%. 100%. Well, you know, and that's the other thing. It's one of those things that can ruin your life.
Absolutely.
So if you're not careful, you have some personal experience with brain trauma.
Quite a bit, yeah. So I mean, fighting MMA, getting kicked in the head a bunch of times every single day for a long period of time is something that's bothersome to me now that I know what I know now, just about how chronic traumatic encephalopathy or CTE works. It's usually now they're associating with several thousands of micro traumas equating to one massive trauma versus if you get into a car accident, you have one, what's worse? And so it's coming down to getting hit 1,000 times is a little bit worse than getting hit just one good time. So definitely something that's continuing to be studied as it's now related into neurodegenerative conditions like Parkinson's and dementia. So looking at people like Muhammad Ali, so on and so forth, or Antonio Brown, for example.
Oh my goodness.
And the emotional changes that occur as a result of brain trauma.
Right.
So
yeah, it's amazing. And they even say conditions like MS can be related to trauma.
All sorts.
Multiple sclerosis. So neuroscientists have long known that. We read this part already. Shrink. Old people may also have diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which we talked about. Since chimpanzees rarely live beyond 50, the scientists picked out humans of comparable age to examine how their brains grow old. They analyzed human volunteers ages 20 to 58 as well as chimpanzees ages 9 to 50. In both species, I can't keep reading this because I don't. Why are we comparing humans to chimpanzees and saying that we don't age as well as they do when we live 50 years more than they do? I don't understand. It's either the author of this article or the original study. And who paid for this study? That's what I want to know.
It seems like they're trying to make a case for the chimps here versus the humans.
Right.
So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, let me see a chimp create AI
Or use AI.
Use
That'd be interesting. How to peel bananas very fast. Maybe that's monkeys, not chimps. I don't know.
Chimps don't eat bananas?
I don't know. I should have been a zoologist, I guess.
At the zoo, at the National Zoo, they have this thing. It's an orangutan in a behind the glass, and there's a rope. You can play tug of war with the orangutan.
He could probably do it with one hand or one finger, probably.
Yeah, it's so I didn't see, he didn't want to play when I was there, but the rope is there, and like a pet, there's a chair for him to go sit and pull, and you can check your strength against the orangutan. I don't know. It sounds like a recipe for an injury. Probably causes more head trauma. So it says some regions shrink faster than others. In humans, the fastest shrinking regions where the orbitofrontal cortex and other parts of the brain that have expanded the most over the past few million years. So this researcher noted that research has yet to show why recently expanded parts of the brain are so vulnerable to shrinking as we get older. It's not clear at all. The neurons don't have any chemical differences. Well, maybe because they're not related to the other animals. I don't know. There's a joke where Billy goes to his mom and says, "Where did we come from?" And mom says, "Well, first God created Adam and Eve, and then everyone's a descendant of Adam and Eve." He goes, "Well, Dad said we come from monkeys." And she goes, "Dad's talking about his side of the family. I'm talking about my side of the family." One possibility, Dr. Vickery said, has to do with the fact that the fastest expanding parts of our brain facilitate our most complex thinking. It's possible that the neurons that carry out this thought wear out quickly, causing the regions to shrink. Ironically, it's our big brains that help us to live decades longer than chimpanzees. They allowed our species to ensure a steadier supply of food, to figure out the importance of clean water, and to invent new kinds of medicine. But in our extra years, our brains continue to shrink. And Dr. Vickery's study suggests that the very regions that help us live longer are shrinking fastest. In other words, the frustrations of growing old, trouble with recalling words, for example, or switching from one task to another, may just be a legacy of our evolution. You have this amazing brain, but it comes at a cost. So again, didn't he say the orbitofrontal cortex is the one that shrinks the most, and that's for decision making. So, but then he didn't say anything about losing decision making abilities. It's talking about memory and remembering words and names. Nothing really adds up in all of this. So what's the takeaway? I mean, take care of your brain. Don't compare yourself to monkeys. What else? Nutritionally, exercise is huge in keeping the brain healthy.
Absolutely, and I think we'll probably really dive deep into iodine and the different nutritional things that you need to have a healthy functioning brain. Things that will support your hypothalamus as well as your thyroid. So
and adrenals.
And so I'd like to take a look at this from a geographic standpoint and see areas that have nutritional deficiencies. Do their brains shrink faster than areas that have adequate amount of iodine, and so on and so forth? So I think there's a lot of variables going in there, and it's kind of hard to clump all of humanity into one. So
and we did a study. We reviewed a study way back. It was maybe a year and a half ago on this podcast. The article was called Superagers. There's people in their mid 80s who don't forget. They have perfect memory. They recall everything. They can speak perfectly, and they studied them to see what they all had in common. And they thought maybe it's because they exercise, and there's no discrepancy between level of exercise, and they thought it was diet, and said there's nothing to do with diet. They said, well, maybe they don't smoke. Nope, some of them smoked, some of them didn't smoke. Maybe it's alcohol. Nope. What else? The only correlation they had was the ones that kept their memory sharp had better relationships, social interaction.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about happiness later on, but
for sure,
my great grandma, I was born with her. We interacted up until she passed away only a couple years ago, and she smoked her whole life. But she really loved my great grandpa, and they would go out and they would do so many different amazing things. And I think their relationship is what kept them alive as long as it did.
There you go.
So
And I bet you those chimpanzees don't have relationships like that.
probably not. Yeah. I don't know if they're monogamous or not. That's another question. So
Yeah.
maybe that'll play a part.
Something to look up. If Brandy was here, that's what she'd be looking up right now.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to come back at you real quick. We're going to keep Dr. Cole for the next couple episodes because, like he said, we do want to talk about some information on happiness. And then we're going to give you some crazy information on iodine, which I was blown away when I found out, kind of like when we found out about melatonin. So please tune in a few days for the next episode. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Cole, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We'll come back soon.
All right.
This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.